Okay, so as we've said, two basic kinds of extrinsic proofs acceptable and popular today: testimony and data. There's not a whole lot to say about data, but there's some interesting kinds of testimony to talk about, so let's get to that right now. Okay. So testimony is certainly, eyewitness accounts and just the things that people have to say to communicate to other people, right? And so whether or not that testimony is reliable and true is certainly a big factor in evaluating the utility, the usefulness, the believability, the trustworthiness of this extrinsic proof, right? And so your job is to, as you find it, not just to toss it into your paper and just walk away like, well, I found this quotation from this article, so because it's printed somewhere, it's got to be self-evident, and you just quote it in your paragraph and walk away and don't say anything about it. That's a terrible job of handling that testimony from a source. So you want to all the time explain and introduce it. Say, here, I found this quotation from this source, and whether you using your MLA citation, how you're going to give credit where credit is due, but also introduce, here's where it came from and here's why I'm using it. And then after you cite your source and quote it, explain why it proves and means what you want it to mean. You would never just leave a quotation of any length and just assume that your audience knows that's why you said it, or it's so self-evident you don't have to talk about it. That job is even more important when the material is possibly untrustworthy or questionable or improbable or doubtful. If you're citing a source that perhaps your audience might not believe, you have to explain even more why they should believe it. Especially in a political situation, if you're talking to one end of the political spectrum and you're citing a source from the opposite end of the spectrum, you're going to have to do even more explaining of why your audience should give credit and trust what is being said. So part of it is Aristotle's rule of disinterestedness, in this important notion that has some value. It's not a completely hard and fast golden rule for everything when you cite sources, but it's important to remember that it's usually true that persons who have nothing to gain by testifying are more reliable usually than those who will profit by doing so, right? You want to find people that are communicating these ideas because it's true, because they care about giving the audience true information, not just because, well, I'm telling you this because if you do what I say, then I will benefit from it, right? If you watch an advertisement, which is obviously already sort of skeptical, but if someone is promoting a brand of cupcakes or something, and then you find out after the commercial is over, oh, that the person who was advertising it is actually the husband of the woman who makes those cupcakes, and he is going to benefit financially if you go out and buy them. If that was not communicated in the commercial or whatever, then you can find out, well, that there are certainly some dubious motives for why you should listen to that testimony about why these cupcakes are so tasty or something like that, which is kind of a silly example, but you can logically draw that out to more important situations when people are testifying for reasons that are not just because it's true, it's because they're being pressured, or they're being sort of sneaky about, if you believe what they say, then they will benefit from you reading their testimony. So it's important to try to seek out as much as possible certainly the experts, but also people whose testimony, expertise is because it's true and they really care about this issue, not just because they will get a profit from you listening to them. Okay, Rhetors certainly need to know, as Quintilian said, whether a witness favors or opposes a point of view, and you certainly need to understand if this witness has held a view for a long time or only adopted it recently. Right? For example, someone who just becomes a Christian in June, you wouldn't send them in early July out, on a 4-month-long mission trips because, well, suddenly, they're on fire for Jesus and they're super excited, but they've only held that view for a short amount of time. And while their enthusiasm is important and helpful, you would want to have, other people go with them to give them, to spread more sound content and long-term knowledge about, Christianity, more than just, well, here's what I learned just a couple weeks ago and it's so great and I want you to share it. That's certainly, that enthusiasm is important, but You want people, experts who have been, holding these views for a long time. They've studied it. They've gone through ups and downs, and not just brief emotional or positive situations like that. So understanding, is this the author's first book or first magazine article? Is it something that she's been writing about for quite some time? If she's been writing multiple books and multiple articles, multiple interviews about this situation, won multiple awards over several years, there's probably a good chance that that witness, that expert, is more credible than someone who's just, well, I thought I'd write an article for fun, see where it gets me. Somebody who has not held that view for a long time. Okay, so as you said, always question the motives of witnesses. That sounds, we're certainly not trying to make you become, cynical and hard-hearted and negative, but there's a difference between saying something like, why is this person saying that? And I wonder why this person is saying that. It's a similar sort of question, but we don't want you to necessarily, I'm not saying you should be negative and always never believe anybody, but seek out, all right, why is this person saying that? What is the reason for writing this article or giving this speech? Things like that. So I know, in contemporary current events, there's a lot of this going on. This slide has nothing to do with any of that. This is an old conversation we've been having with students for a long, long time. It has nothing to do with, the current political situations right now, though. You can certainly adapt it to current events how you need to, right? And so, as we said at the end of the last slide, testimony is valuable to the extent the audiences will accept the authority and credibility of the witnesses who provide it. Okay, and so you certainly want to find, as much as possible, make your job a little bit easier. Find witnesses, find experts that your audience will already be more willing to believe. Certainly for this paper, and then in the years ahead, certainly. So there are two kinds of witnesses. Like there's two kinds of ethos, situated and invented. With testimony, there are two kinds of witnesses: community authorities and approximate authorities. And we'll go over these kind of briefly. Might take a couple of videos, but that's okay. Community authorities are basically experts, right? People whose words, actions have earned them respect within a given community, right? These are the people that other members of that group or community say, these are the best representatives of us, read their works, follow their example. These are experts, okay? And your job then to try to join these communities, you need to show that you have taken the time, done the work, done the research. You cite these authorities to add credibility to your own ethos, right? For example, if you want to join the community of Democrats and run for president as a community, as a Democratic candidate, you would probably want to show your Democratic constituents that you are familiar with the works of Roosevelt and Kennedy and President Obama. Those are generally considered the experts, the good examples of that community. You would not want to tell your potential voters that you're going to model President Johnson or Carter or Clinton, in your behavior or in your, financial policies or international relations and things like that, right? Those presidents are generally looked down upon, especially today, for different reasons, policies or behavior wise, but you would want to sort of stay away from those kinds of examples of that community, right? You want to show that you are aware of the history, aware of the ideas within that group, and you want to link yourself and model yourself after the best and the brightest, right? You want to become good at basketball, you'd watch the experts and copy them and do what they do. Listen to their advice. You wouldn't want to necessarily listen to people that tried and were in the NBA for 1 or 2 seasons and then weren't good enough to make it. You'd never watch one of their training videos or anything like that. You'd watch the people that have won championships and have won MVPs and things like that, right? So you show your audience you're familiar with that community, its ideas, and you've done that work and put in that time to know what this is about. Find the sources, find the experts, right? How do you do that, especially for a written paper like this? Well, there are lots of different ways to see where these authors or movies or whatever you're citing, if it's an article or a book or a newspaper, website page, things like that. A movie, if you're talking about something visual, right? See where other people have cited that work. If you go on Amazon and scroll down and you find out that 300 other books cite this one work, you can imagine, well, this is probably an important source of information. If everybody else is citing this book, if other authors are citing this author, I should really, if this is the top and the best, I should check this one out, right? Or if it's brand new, maybe you should figure out, well, what do other people say? Check out some reviews, check out some online videos. What are the people saying? And not just the people who are paid to review, and so they're going to say it's great. That's like we said, find out if they're being, rewarded for their opinion, as we said a few minutes ago, right? Check their accomplishments, check their credentials. Do they teach at a university, or have they held a job for a long time? Or is it just, I'm a professional web blogger? Like, well, if you're just a stay-at-home person and you make money from just putting your opinion online, that's not the same as someone that, gets paid by an institution that's been around for a long time and is trustworthy, So watch out for, that. Find out who these people are and why are their words and ideas, worth investigating and understanding. Check out, the foundations that have, supported this work. You can see the differences between, if someone is a conservative, they've been assisted by these institutions, right? Heritage Foundation, ISI. Liberal sorts of political people have been helped by Brookings Institute, Common Cause, things like that. As soon as you find out that these are the institutions that have supported it, you might find out, well, that will help me understand the biases of this sort of thing. Just same thing there with, like, where has the author been published? If it's a book that's coming from these Christian publishing companies, you can probably trust it for the most part. But if it's from a secular publishing company like Prometheus Books that publishes the secular humanist manifesto, things like that, Beacon Books, Methuen, Routledge has some good stuff, but they're not overtly atheist or anything. They're just secular. You got to understand, like, this is the source material where it's come from. These are the people that have invested in this idea and these authorities. Well, now their biases. That doesn't necessarily make them inaccurate, but once you know their backgrounds, why they're writing it, that'll help you understand. Like finding a good board game, you'd watch a bunch of different reviews, read about it, watch some videos, find out what other people say about this source, this author, this work, this movie. You never go to a movie that you've never done research about or heard anything about. Probably, you'd understand that this is what people care about and this is what they believe, and now I can evaluate whether I should trust this, author or movie or book or show or something like that, right? So, of course, experts disagree, especially over time, but, looking back at over time, especially some of the ideas that you're going to be writing about for your senior thesis, you'll know that by now the experts have been pretty well established, and so it shouldn't be too difficult, but going forward in different sort of papers and activities you're going to be in, college and beyond, this slide especially, how to evaluate community authorities, how are experts, created, how much have they been published, where have they been published, things like that. What other experts cite them and credit them and are influenced by them, that sort of thing. So this slide is especially good. We've spent a lot of time here on this slide, but it's really an important thing for evaluating all sorts of experts. So I want you to really grasp what the ideas of evaluating community authorities. Okay, so we'll pause there for now. Come back with a couple other videos to finish up these kinds of ideas on testimony.